I got epic revenge on my cheating wife by serving divorce papers hidden in her birthday cake. I did a final check of the house to make sure I hadn't missed anything important. Everything I needed for my business trip was packed. I informed my wife of 25 years that I would be parking my company car at the airport, but it was still at the office with other company property. At 45 I retired early from 25 years in management, choosing to invest my options in my company account. I avoided taxes and secured a substantial retirement check exceeding my salary. Management, opting for 3/4 of full retirement benefits by investing my stock options annually in my company's retirement account. I avoided taxes and secured a substantial retirement check exceeding my current salary. My focus on tech investments paid off with retirement checks now going into my new Bank of America account. Last Friday I deposited my final paycheck, which included vacation pay and an $850,000 check from sold stock. A tidy nest egg. The company was content to replace me at half the cost to avoid it being considered marital property. I delayed depositing the stock check until today. I donated my expensive suits to Goodwill, keeping only one, and downsized my possessions. With a lower tax rate and cost of living in my new location compared to California, I would be better off financially. I rented a U-Haul for a one-way trip through my family trust. It was loaded with everything I was taking. He arranged it, and I paid in cash to avoid ties to me. I left the West Coast to return to my small hometown, avoiding the job I hated and my wife's recent behavior. I looked forward to a simpler life with distant neighbors, my wife forgetting that I still owned my parents' farm, which she despised. I realized I had married a snob who hadn't changed, and I wondered if I'd ever known her true self. Her actions clarified the reality of our relationship and led me to plan my new future with a surprising sense of contentment. My escape from the past would affect many. I never closed my parents' trust, kept the farm out of the marital estate, rented the land to local farmers. Instead of managing their design and construction, a relative prepared my parents' old homestead and provided a place to stay until it was livable, so I wasn't worried. I called my wife, Kendra, to remind her that I was leaving on a business trip before she got home from hers. My 3 daughters and their husbands would arrive 2 hours before her to set up a surprise birthday party. We planned everything together. One of my daughters even invited her mother's boss and his wife. About Kendra's work, she wanted to meet the woman she had heard so much about. My daughters didn't know how big the surprise really was. Over 50 family and friends came to the potluck dinner to celebrate her late birthday. We celebrated late because she was out with the management team on her birthdays. She told us it was something important she couldn't miss. I knew better but said nothing. I told my daughters that I had recorded my birthday wishes for my wife on a disc. Even though I had to fly out, I wanted to be there in spirit. I asked them to play my recording at the end just before the party slowed down. That way everyone would know my thoughts about their mother. All they had to do was turn on the big patio TV and press play. I left the timing up to them. It was time to text my eldest daughter's husband to let him know that she was going to be home for her birthday. I also gave him my new email address. We had worked together for a few years. David was one of the rising stars at my previous job and met my oldest daughter through me as an accountant. He knew about my retirement plans. He thought I was doing this because I'd found out about my wife's affair. He doubted it until I showed him the investigator's report. He's the type you have to see to believe. I felt some regret about tonight, mostly because David was going to learn a hard truth in an unpleasant way, but the truth had to come out. He suggested I remove all my contact information online, even closing my Facebook page, which I did. Once Kendra was on the plane home, he said to let her worry about the unknown. She might be my mother. The last thing I did was send copies of our bank statements and a list of our small debts to my lawyer. According to the latest property tax assessment, our house was worth about my half. I could buy a new house and still have money left over to furnish it. I threw my cell phone in the trash under the kitchen sink as I left our house for the last time. I made sure nothing I did would be noticed until after the party. I left California. It was sad. After 25 years I was heading back to the Badlands of South Dakota as a nobody. Just like when I left, fewer than 10 people outside of the family would miss me. Knowing my video would change many lives made me smile. I stopped at a cell phone store and bought a new phone. I got a local number for my new area. Back in the truck I made a call when a woman answered. I said, "This is the new number, I'm heading out." She replied, "Got it." I then turned it off to save the charge for emergencies. I was looking forward to the drive east in the middle of March before it got too hot. Kendra and I met at an Aerosmith concert years ago. She was a local Californian and I was from out of state. We were married a year later. The same day my parents flew out for the wedding. I worked in research and development and Kendra worked in importing and marketing. We had been with the same companies for years. Even now Kendra turned heads when she walked into a room. I couldn't say the same for myself. I had the typical dad bod with a pot belly and all. Kendra was eager to get home after Spending 2 weeks with her boss and lover Eric Hopper. She was sorry her husband Colin had to leave suddenly, but that happened often with two busy careers. Being with Eric was a nice break, but she was looking forward to her normal routine. 2 weeks of sex every night was fun for a while, it made her feel young and appreciated, but she still preferred making love with her husband twice a week on a regular basis. After her private jet landed, she cleared the airport and got into her company car to drive home. When Kendra arrived, she was surprised to see her family there. All three of her daughters and their husbands had made it. Her oldest was 23 and the twins were 22. Kendra loved the attention from her family, close friends, and some co-workers. Kendra was surprised when her boss and his wife showed up. She had just spent 2 weeks with him when she asked who had invited them. Her oldest daughter admitted it was her. She said, "Your boss always brags about you and his wife wanted to meet you." This made Kendra feel special and proud. Finally, around 8 a.m. our three daughters congratulated their mom on reaching another milestone. "Mom," the twin said, "Dad didn't want to be left out, so he recorded a special message for you." I talked about some of the highlights of the past year. I mentioned a few fun things before getting serious, like the birth of our first grandson, the marriage of our last single daughter, our last anniversary, and our plans for a second honeymoon. "It's been a busy year," I said. "I thought we were finally moving in the same direction as a couple. I was looking forward to romantic weekends like we used to have before the kids came along. Then I came home from a trip overseas and found this on our security system. It changed my whole world. I found out that my wife and I were living in two different realities." The video clip began to play, showing my wife and daughters talking about having lovers on the side without their spouses knowing. It got very quiet as the clip revealed their comments about their lovers, who they were, what they were like, what they did, and when they even talked. The first time I saw it I was shocked. It seemed unreal to hear women talking so openly about their affairs. I had to watch it more than once to accept this new reality. It was interesting to hear how easy they thought it was to deceive their spouses. Kendra bragged that she had her third lover in the last 10 years. Kendra bragged that she had had her third lover in the last 10 years. She said that each lover brought her different and exciting experiences until she got bored. She proudly said that she was already looking for her fourth. It was clear that their husbands had no idea how these women really viewed them. It was easy to deceive their spouses, they just had to make them believe it. They were the most important thing in their lives. The details they shared were quite revealing to some of the spouses who were also at the party. For many this would be a night to remember. I came back on screen to say I wondered if they knew they were being recorded by our security system. If they did, they must have set me up. It was the sickest joke on me. If not, it showed their true feelings towards their spouses. Just their words weren't enough for me to believe what I heard. I said, but it made me doubt. The next clip will show what I found thanks to the investigators I hired. The second clip showed my wife and her boss on their last business trip. It was filmed during the first week of their 2-week stay. It captured everything: the long hours lying naked on Vancouver's only nude beach, the hotel suite they shared at the Westin Bayshore Hotel, the hotel registry showing them as Mr. and Ms., their romantic horse and carriage ride through Stanley Park, whispered sweet nothings. There were romantic dinners, a night boat ride around the bay, and a day of whale watching. To anyone who didn't know, it looked like a honeymoon. By the time the video ended, everyone knew I had been fooled more than once. The last words I recorded said it all. "I guess this was your birthday present to yourself, my dear. Celebrating your 43rd birthday with your newest love must have been thrilling." Kendra, "I can't prove you slept with your boss Eric Hopper every night of your trip, but I can't say you didn't either," I said in the video. "I know for a fact your room had only one double bed for my 3 sons-in-law. I have to ask, do you really know what your wives are doing behind your back? It seems I didn't. Are you sure your children are yours? Are my children really mine?" I continued, "How many of these special business trips, Kendra, were just personal playtime with your latest lover? Was I that bad of a lover and husband all these years? If you were so unhappy, why didn't you just ask for a divorce? One last question, Kendra. Are you such a valuable employee to Mr. Hopper that you willingly sleep with him? What does he really pay you for? Does he pay you extra for kinky stuff? What is the going rate for a married woman to be his personal hooker? I wish I could be there. I'd like to hear Eric Hopper's answers to these questions too. I think his wife, if she's here, would like to hear them too." The screen went black. The silence on the patio was deafening. No one knew what to say or do. My testimony raised a lot of questions and ruined a few reputations. Even in California, where social norms are loose, everyone felt uncomfortable being a part of it. The police here don't even bother with thefts under $1,000. That was part of the price we paid to live in California. Many would have heated conversations with their spouses when they got home that night. One thing was for sure: this was A celebration everyone would remember for the rest of their lives. I was later told that my wife Kendra and our 3 daughters had tears streaming down their faces. I wondered if it was because they saw the consequences of their actions, if it was because they were caught. I doubted any of them cared about me at that moment. The icing on the cake was when Eric Hopper's wife Karen Hopper, a beautiful 37-year-old, pulled out 2 legal envelopes and handed them to Eric Hopper's wife Karen. I heard that Karen took great pleasure in slapping my soon-to-be ex-wife and calling her some nasty names. Both Kendra and her lover were now being divorced by their spouses, facing the public fallout of their actions. One would wonder how they felt about their new reality. Eric was shocked to be caught and exposed in front of his wife. He could never undo what had happened. Both of them had seen and heard my evidence. He thought his wife had no idea because she never doubted him. Then he realized she was my lawyer. Kendra had caused all this. He would have to fire her if he had any chance of saving his marriage. Revealing the truth about my wife and my world had destroyed 5 marriages, my 3 sons. My in-law told their wives not to come home until they were ready to tell the whole truth. Even though the younger generation had different views on morals and principles, some things were too much. But this is California and things are different here. Unfortunately, it took something like this for them to learn. I drove until I felt tired. I stopped at a motel and parked ere the office could see my truck. After I checked in, I got one of my suitcases and the new cell phone. I got one of my suitcases and the new cell phone and went to my room. After a shower, I got ready for bed and charged the phone. Curiosity made me turn it on to see if I had a message from the lady with my number. I did. The text said home from the party. Call me Karen. My divorce lawyer answered before the 3rd ring. Hi darling, I said. How did your day go? Better than we expected, Karen replied. Eric and I arrived at the house. There were about 100 people there. Everyone was in a good mood. Kendra was thrilled. She felt like the queen bee. Then just as things were winding down, your daughters played your recorded video, because of what you revealed. I got 3 new clients for the firm, Karen said, pausing to catch her breath. As soon as the video of your wife and daughters played, they realized they had forgotten to turn off the security cameras. Karen laughed. Everyone was shocked to hear them talk so casually about their affairs. She continued, then the clip of our spouse's romantic getaway sealed it. Everyone knew the first conversation was real. When I served our spouses, everyone ran for cover. It was like someone yelled, fire in your house. Your 3 sons-in-law asked if I was a divorce attorney. I said yes, that's why I served them. I got 3 retainer checks on the spot. It looks like your daughter's relationships may also end in divorce. I drove Eric's car home and left him there, Karen said happily. Did they try to call me? I asked. After most people left, your wife tried to call you. We watched her find your ringing cell phone in the trash. Throwing your phone away spoke volumes. Without saying a word, it was as if you were telling your family you were done with them, Karen explained. My husband stood silent, thinking he had been so careful. I said, smiling, the countdown is 6 months. I don't regret finding this conversation on the security system. Without it I wouldn't have met you. Maybe they will settle quickly without a fight. Do you still want to sell everything and cash in? Karen asked. Yes, unless she can buy me out with so many people. I said tomorrow she will start to panic. I would love to see her face when she finds out you are no longer with your former employer. Karen sighed. I will put my law firm up for sale tomorrow. I told my sister and her husband you are on your way. He is looking forward to meeting you. This new reality they've created has consequences that have only just begun. I wonder if they'll still be laughing when we're done. I replied before saying goodbye. Kendra stood there holding her husband's cell phone. She wanted to tell him that Eric Hopper meant nothing to her and that her 3 daughters belonged to him. Then it hit her that he no longer cared about the truth. This was his way of showing everyone that he was done with them. Her lies were to blame. She had been too selfish to think about the consequences of getting caught. She realized now that the fun, excitement, and sex on the side were not worth the cost. There was no going back. Lie was still a small town in many ways. People might forgive, but they would not forget. There would always be whispers behind her back. Colin's actions sent a clear message. He had written them all out of his life. At least until he got over his anger, though it might take a while. He had always forgiven her bad behavior in the past. Maybe he would again. Kendra began to hope that in time she could win him back. Kendra admitted to herself that she hadn't planned her lifestyle. It had evolved over the years, being progressive. When she found herself in a second affair, Eric Hopper was her 3rd lover. To this day she never thought she would be caught. Colin and she had been so busy with their careers that when they were home they focused on each other and shut out the world. Her own stupidity had tipped him off. Now because of her actions, even her daughters were facing divorce. Karen and I grew up less than 20 miles apart, but never met due to the distance. 20 meters apart but never met due to our age difference. I graduated high school before she did. I booked an appointment with her firm to explore divorce options. By chance she was assigned to me. After hiring I showed her the video clip. She was shocked to realize the man my wife was talking about could be her husband. We confirmed it through her personal Facebook page. That day we both knew our marriages were over. We bonded over our spouse's actions. After a long talk about their ethics we Decided to work together. As we investigated, our relationship grew. At first we kept it professional, but within a few weeks we were helping each other heal. We became friends. Unless you have experienced it, you cannot understand the betrayal, anger, hurt and hate. We had many phone calls to work through these emotions, and that is how our relationship began. We supported each other out of mutual need. Talking about our roots brought us closer. We were kindred spirits with shared experiences. We laughed about places we both knew and things we did when we were young. These conversations lifted our spirits. Neither of us were looking for love, but it happened. Last week, after dealing with her daughters, we admitted that we had fallen in love. So far, our relationship has been platonic, and we plan to keep it that way until our divorces are finalized. 12 days ago, right after I said goodbye to Kendra, Karen called to say that she had just told her daughters about their father and they didn't believe her. I explained that I didn't know who Karen was when I hired her to do my divorce. It wasn't until she saw my evidence that we realized we had the same problem. I suggested that they see the evidence before passing judgment. Karen's daughters came to my house. I showed them the house security system and how it worked. You could turn off the outside cameras before entering the house, but if you forgot to turn off the inside cameras, they would record any sound or movement. I thought they needed to understand that before they saw the video. Then I had Amber and Meadow watch the conversation between my wife and our daughters. This is what your mother saw after I hired her. Because of her ethics, she couldn't tell you how she knew. I explained, right now your father and my wife are in Vancouver on their fake business trip. I have investigators getting more evidence. When my wife Kendra returns, she will be served with divorce papers. I had a long talk with the two girls about the meaning of vows, emphasizing that while forgiveness is easy, rebuilding trust is the real challenge. I expressed concern that my daughters are learning from their mother's behavior, which Kendra admitted has been going on for years. This situation has caused us to question the sincerity of our marriage. I pointed out that our lives have been torn apart by these actions, and without our children, everything we knew would feel like a lie. Meadow, Karen's youngest, surprised me with her insight, noting that if our spouses respected us, they would never have betrayed us. Karen's daughter mentioned that I reminded her of her grandfather in making complex issues simple and understandable, a trait she associates with our shared rural background. Both Karen and I recognize the value of the simpler life we left behind and are trying to return to it, away from the constant rush and competition of our current lives. The next morning I was on my way. I was back on the Interstate East by tonight. I hope to be out of Nevada and into northern Utah near the Wyoming border. I took my time to see some places I had always wanted to see. Surprisingly, I was at peace that night. After checking into a nice inn, I checked my new email account. I had a message to call my oldest son. I said, "Hi Dad, glad you called." He replied, "I have a lot to tell you. But first, where are you?" "I'm on the road, licking my wounds," I said with a serious smile. "I'll tell that to the person who asked if I'd heard from you." David said it had been a crazy day. "Kendra showed up at the office this morning, demanding to know where you were. She decided to catch a plane to work things out with you. She still thought she could save the relationship," he continued. "I told her you had taken early retirement and were moving. She asked where. I said I didn't know. She called me a liar and said you know where the retirement checks are sent or can find out," he informed me. "It went downhill from there. I had to have security escort her out." He said I shouldn't have laughed. "But I did." "Oh, it gets better, Dad." Carrie called and said her mom got fired right after Eric Hopper was served with her $5 million alienation of affection lawsuit by a lawyer in Vancouver. She had to call a cab to get home. Kendra went to an employment lawyer and gave him another case. They served him around 4 this afternoon. David stated, "Carrie wants to come home and see our son. I told her we are not doing anything until I confirm my son is mine. If she doesn't like it, she can take me to court." Carrie claims she hasn't slept with anyone since we got married. He continued. I replied, "That's not what your own words claim in the recorded chat." "Well, at least they're not bothering me about it," I said with a smile. "I'm taking the time to see some sights I've always wanted to see. This impromptu vacation is turning out to be the best thing I've done in a long time." The question is, are you really going to divorce her? David, the twins got their clothes and moved in with Kendra. David said, "My wife is staying there too. No one wants anything to do with them right now. Everyone's too upset to think straight. As for the divorce, it depends on what the DNA proves. If he's not my son, there's no reason for us to stay together right now. It seems like I was sold a false story. She only showed me what she wanted me to see, like bait on a hook. I've had about 6 months to deal with my feelings. Believe me, it takes that long to figure out what you can live with, so take your time and don't rush into anything." He advised, "Time is helping me move on and start my life again. It's going in a new direction and I'm excited about it." I said, "So you're not coming back?" David just asked if one of my lawyers needed me for court. I said the place I'm moving to has lower taxes and cost of living, so I'll be ahead of the game financially, plus the CEO wants me to move to a new place so I'll be able to afford it. I told him I'll do it as long as I don't have to wear a suit and tie. Well, Dad, they already miss you here. David said. I've heard that people bring you their ideas and you point out what's good and what might go wrong. Is that your new cell phone number? Yes, it is, but for now keep it to yourself. I said, one last thing, next time you talk to Kendra, tell her she can go back to one of her other friends with benefits. After all, they accepted her before. If she argues, just say that for the last 10 years you've shown that he was just your backup plan. I didn't know it at the time, but David recorded our conversation and sent it to my wife and daughters. I would later learn that Kendra was not impressed. She thought I had no right to advise my son, and my daughters were beginning to see the cost of following their mother's lifestyle. Each of their husbands wanted as little contact with them as possible. They were beginning to turn against their mother. The next call was to Karen, who was thrilled to hear from me. She and her staff had been swamped with 5 more divorce cases because of my wife's surprise birthday party. She knew about Kendra's firing and said it was Eric's attempt to reconcile, but she wasn't interested. He didn't realize the board had already talked to her and explained everything. Kendra would be rehired and promoted, and he would be demoted for using company assets for personal reasons. She was just that good at her job. Karen told her daughter that she was moving back to South Dakota after her divorce. If they wanted to stay in California, they would have to get their own place or live. With her dad, I've reached the age where I want a simpler life, she said. Meadow asked, is it because you've fallen in love with Colin? Karen replied, I have, but we haven't acted on it yet, but I had to explain our history. Meadow said, I hope it makes you feel young again. It does, Karen said. She invited her to come with her when she moved and added, you're old enough to decide what kind of life you want to have. Learn from what I'm dealing with. I realized that Kendra would have a hard time finding another man like me because of the publicity of our breakup. Her actions had ruined her chances for an honest, loving relationship. I wondered how long it would take for her to realize that. Around noon I drove to my hometown. It had taken over 3 days to get here. I found a small diner and went in to eat before heading out to the farm. During my last week at work I had arranged for the electricity to be hooked up. I was waiting for my burger and fries, drinking coffee. Son of a witch, is that you? Colin White, an old-timer, said as he walked in and sat down at my booth. It's good to see you, son. You're looking good. Thanks, Uncle John. Where is your wife? I replied with a smile. She and our daughters are at school, and our daughters are at the house getting it ready. I had to fix some minor plumbing problems. The house is almost ready to move and they cleaned it up, got the refrigerator fixed and working, and replaced the fuse on the old stove. You will probably want to update and modernize. We are living in town now, as Robert and his wife have taken over the farm. Good, order some food on me and we will catch up. I said it was good to be back with my family. Before heading to my childhood home I stopped at the local grocery store to pick up some basics. It was surprising how much cheaper the food prices were here. I filled 2 carts by the time I got to the checkout. The cashier and I had gone to school together, so we caught up as she walked me through. When I arrived at my family home I was surprised at how good it looked from the outside. My aunt and cousins came out to greet me and helped bring in the groceries. After they left I took a closer look at the house. Uncle John was right, I would need major updates. I called him for names of good construction crews. 2 hours later he brought them to the house. This gave me time to unpack. After looking at the house we decided it would cost less to build a new one. The old house needed all new electrical wiring and plumbing. The barn was in good shape with a new roof, some boards replaced, and a paint job. It would be like new. The stalls would be removed so I could use the barn as my shop for tractor and heavy equipment repairs. That night I called Karen and told her what I had learned. We decided on a 1-story house with a small cold storage shed built on a 4-foot crawl space, double insulated for the cold winters. I promised to visit her brother in-law's dealership the next day. I called the builder and told him what I wanted. He said he had some plans, he would bring them over after work. I returned the rental truck and went to the nearest car dealership. I bought a nice lightly used Ford truck with low mileage, got it transferred and insured. Before returning the rental I went to the bank, made a deposit, picked up some blank checks, and ordered some. The difference in gas prices shocked me. Here it was much cheaper. I then went to introduce myself to Karen's older brother. It turned out we went to high school together. He offered me a job on the spot. I could start when I was ready. I told him about my plans and my ongoing relationship with the company. He teased me about his sister and my relationship. He said he never really understood his sister's first husband. I agreed with him, the contractor, and I agreed on a price to build a 4-bedroom house with a large 2-car garage. Bedroom house with a large 2. The house would have an open floor plan, a laundry room, a mud room with garage access, and a double insulated crawl space that would be covered by my divorce settlement. After updating Karen on the signing of the contract for the new house and meeting with her brother, David called to inform me that Kendra had hired a private company to find me, thinking we could work things out. I told David that there was nothing to work out and that if we got back together, Kendra would only repeat her actions. David. I reflected on my words and realized that many smart people cannot see simple truths, which is why there are so many problems in our government. I explained that Kendra does not see her actions as the problem and thinks I need to be retrained to accept her behavior. She is not sorry for what she did, only that she got caught. David acknowledged the truth in my perspective and decided that he needed to talk to Carrie about understanding marriage equality. He mentioned his father saying what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and realizing that his mother saw him as a means to an end, I suggested that David demand marriage counseling, preferably with a conservative counselor, to expose Carrie to a different viewpoint. David agreed that if Carrie did not find a balance, their relationship might not survive and he might have to leave for his own good. I started working on the barn, tearing out the stalls. It kept me busy. The physical work was hard, but it was good to use my muscles again. Thursday night I got a call that surprised me. It was from Karen. My daughters thought I needed cheering up. She said they had called my brother to tell him about our divorces. They didn't know he had known for over 4 months. Meadow explained how I had found out about their father's cheating and mentioned that I had found out about their father's cheating. Joseph told them he went to school with you and explained how you helped him get the dealership years ago. I owe that man a lot. It came out that you had moved back to take over your family's farm. They talked about us for about an hour. Slowly it all came out. Kendra hired a company to find me. I said she thought if she could just talk to me, she could get me to forgive and come back. How did you find that out? Karen said my daughters won't tell anyone after what they did. I asked what they did. They used my credit card and booked me a flight. I arrive at the regional airport at 8:00 p.m. On Friday night, Karen declared, "Start living the dream, Mom, they said you both deserve it." I waited for her with a dozen red roses, feeling both excited and hopeful. This weekend marked our first official time together, and it made me chuckle to think that the last time I felt this youthful and silly was as a teenager, and as she approached her brunette hairstyle to accentuate her natural features, I couldn't help but smile. Her natural features, I couldn't help but smile. It was refreshing to see her dressed casually in blue jeans, a yellow blouse and a soft denim-like jacket, looking comfortable and genuine. Knowing she hadn't eaten, we grabbed her suitcase and headed to Ruby Tuesdays, where I had a surprise planned. After parking and securing her suitcase, we entered. Her brother and sisters-in-law were already there, and by the end of the meal Karen had agreed to be her brother's lawyer when she moved back home. Driving up the driveway to my childhood home, I wasn't sure what to expect. It was a typical 60s-style house, cozy and solid. I poured her a beer, pulled out some of my parents' old records and put them on. It was nice to listen to Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, and Old Blue Eyes as we cuddled on the couch like teenagers. These were the songs our parents listened to when we were growing up. Kendra was not happy. She was used to getting her own way. She needed to talk to her husband Colin and was getting nowhere. There was no record of him taking a flight, renting a car or anything. Even private investigators found nothing. His Facebook page was closed. His credit card was cancelled by Bank of America at his request. Everything she checked every day this week led to a dead end. His lawyer called and asked for the name of her lawyer. She had not hired one because she thought their marriage could be saved. He had removed all his contacts from the old phone records. She knew he had relatives, but she couldn't remember their names. His family had never been important to her, so she never paid much attention. He had been so careful to remove all traces of himself that she couldn't even get his social security number. Even their daughters were starting to worry. He used to be in daily contact with them, but since he left no one had heard from him except David, and David didn't tell her he had told her. Oldest Carrie no contact until he could prove little Colin was his son, but he didn't seem to be in a hurry to do that. Colin didn't act like Colin, and it frustrated her. Colin had always done what he was supposed to do. It was the one constant she could rely on. Now she had to hire someone to do it. What he always did. The problem was that hired help didn't do it with as much care and love as Colin did. This whole situation was a strain on everyone. If Colin had just done what he always did, her relationship with her daughters would not be falling apart. They blamed her for some of their relationship problems. Every man in a relationship has to learn that the woman is the boss. When she found Colin, she would make him pay dearly for his inappropriate behavior towards her and her children. There is nothing more simple or beautiful than sitting on the porch drinking a cup of coffee and watching the sunrise. I know, because that's what Karen and I used to do. Until now I never understood why my parents started their day like that every day. They could be here feeling loved and appreciated by the universe, and you give you the assurance that you can face anything. Karen said they could sit and watch without saying a word because they saw their world the same way. I took her hand just like my dad would with my mom without saying a word. I knew I was saying a lot. Driving back home I realized I was returning to my true self and leaving behind what I had become. I see the change already starting in me. I feel more secure and at peace than I can ever remember. I said quietly, I saw the same cloud lift off of you last night. Karen said, it's a cultural shock for me. Nothing seems fake here. It's all real here. You can hear yourself think. The morning silence allows it. I had forgotten how beautiful and soothing it is. Moments like this enhance the quality of life that can only be found when two hearts are ready. This weekend was an opening for both of us. We began to learn about ourselves. Although we came close, we did not get sexually involved. Both of us wanted more from the relationship than just sex. The relationship than just sex. I met her parents for the first time. It was a good visit and I got to work fixing the timing on his tractor and a few minor things. It took about 4 hours, but when I was done it ran smooth and steered straight. Karen saw me dirty with oil, grease and dirt for the first time. She watched me clean up in her parents' mudroom, smiling the whole time. Mudrooms, my mom said, were created so husbands wouldn't track the mess into the house. Her dad said the tractor would have been in the shop for a week if I hadn't been there. Her mom was thrilled at the prospect of her only daughter coming home. It was sad to see her off at the airport on Sunday night. It had been 2 months since I left California and things were moving forward. Kendra finally got a lawyer. Karen's husband was still an idiot trying to save every nickel he could. David and Carrie were seeing a marriage counselor as the baby was his. They saw him weak and making slow progress. Carrie was looking at the whole situation differently as she was forced to see the other side. Little Colin was growing like a weed. I was looking forward to seeing the little guy. Kendra and my daughter's faith and hope were both shaken by their divorces. Their ex-husbands told them they couldn't see each other anymore. They had to go to court and get a divorce. Husbands told them they couldn't trust them anymore. Sadly, I understood why the relationship between my ex-wife and her daughters had changed. I was back in LA, flown in by private jet to spend a week or two testing the company's newest model, which had to pass final inspection before going into mass production. I would spend the next 2 weeks ensuring its durability, strength, ease of movement, and reparability. Hampton Inns and Suites. Amber Hopper decided to take her mother to dinner at the hotel restaurant. They were already seated when I walked in. Amber saw me and smiled as I walked over to her. We had met earlier that day for coffee to make sure everything was going according to plan. Mom, I hope you don't get mad at me, but I invited a friend to join us. I think you'll be pleased to see her, Karen said. What are you up to? She asked, sliding over to make room. It's just someone I've gotten to know over the past few weeks, and Meadow and I both agree that we're looking forward to spending more time with him, Amber said as I sat down. Karen turned to face me and broke into a huge smile when she realized who I was. In the last 2 months I had grown a mustache and a goatee and seemed to have lost weight, but I hadn't. My body fat had turned to muscle. Wow, what a surprise. Karen said, I love your new look, but what are you doing here? First of all, I am going to have a nice dinner with my friend and her daughter. I hope I'm not too late, Meadow said as she sat down. I had to work a little longer than I had planned. During the meal I explained that I was in town to test a new model I had planned. The biggest change was that the giant tractor would run on natural gas. If it met our expectations, farmers could build a fueling station on the farm at the cost of labor. The equipment cost would include the fixtures for the fueling pump. Since natural gas is cheaper and cleaner than gasoline, we thought we had a very marketable product. Just before we ordered dessert, Karen's daughters asked a question. Do you two hope to be settled in South Dakota before school starts in September? Karen said yes. Why? How far is Vermilion from your new home? I'm working on my MBA at the University of South Dakota this fall. Can I live with you guys? If not, I can stay with Uncle Joseph. I chose that school because it's one of the cheapest in the country and I can cut down on my living expenses. We want to be ready in case you both decide to come, so let your mother know what colors you want for your rooms, that you plan on us coming, Meadow said more hopefully. Karen said we want you to make the decision on your own. If I force you, you'll blame Colin. He'll end up paying for it because of the resentment. How did you figure that out, Mom? Amber asked. Colin asked if I trusted you to make the right decision for yourselves. I said, yes, she explained. He said, then let them do it. Amber and Meadow looked at me confused. Then Amber spoke. That first night you sized us up. By the time we left you knew what we were going to do, didn't you, Colin? I knew you were going to get an education, Amber, and that it could be anywhere. Meadow was my focus. When she mentioned respect I knew how it was going to turn out. I explained the hardest part was reminding your mother that it was all going to work out. The unknown is always hard, but time will reveal the answers we need. We had just finished dinner and were leaving. Karen and I were going to see a movie. Amber and Meadow were heading home. That is when Kendra spotted me. She drove up as I opened the car door for Karen. It took her a few minutes to recognize me because of my new look. My lifestyle had changed. I was no longer sitting behind a desk. By the time she realized it was me, we were gone. I had gotten slimmer to work on the barn, installing a wood stove for heat. While I was doing it, I had gotten slimmer to work on the barn, installing a wood stove for heat in the barn. The old pot belly I had carried for years was long gone. I now had a slim build and looked younger than I had in years, as the stress I had carried was gone. In many ways I had been reborn. Parts of my soul that had been hidden by my relationships over time were coming out as if they had been released. I dropped Karen off after the movie and returned to my suite after leaving a request for a wake-up call in the morning. Security recognized me. It was this that I had enjoyed the most, seeing the finished product ready for final approval before mass production. Research and development can be quite tedious, but seeing the finished product in all its glory made it all worthwhile. I got to work and was already testing it before the rest of the team showed up. I had already discovered a few minor things that needed to be changed and had rescheduled some of them for later. I had already discovered a few minor things that needed to be changed and had rerouted the feed line so that it would not be affected by the direct heat. I had even written them up for the final report. Everyone was surprised and pleased with how good I looked. The president came in as I was using the test tractor to pull and push back LB. It handled and maneuvered with ease, especially through the mud bed we had formed for this test. He had to laugh when he saw me in a pair of blue jeans, wearing a white t-shirt and a blue baseball shirt and a blue baseball cap, working this huge tractor backwards like I owned it. The gears shifted smoothly, the tractor's arms could hold the weight we needed them to hold. I tried to tip it over several times but failed every time. I even drove it up a ramp on 2 wheels and it came back down on all 4s, just like it was supposed to. The balance in this piece of equipment was excellent. Colin, you're still the man. What's your first impression of this beast? If it can take what I'm going to put it through, it's going to be one of the top 5 we've ever designed. Apart from a few minor tweaks, it's passing with flying colors. An added plus is that it uses less fuel than a normal diesel engine, I said as I offered my hand. Good to see you again, Pete, he said. Good to see you again, Pete, he said with a smile. We would give you your old position back if you wanted it, but the way you look, I understand why you moved on. Where did you find the fountain of youth? Little did he understand that he had discovered the secret to my evaluation of a new product. I treated it the same way I treated my first truck, like the piece of junk it was. By the end of the day I said it had held up well. It was almost 8 before I got back to my hotel. As I entered the lobby I spotted my daughter Carrie and her husband David waiting. Carrie was holding little Colin. I walked in looking like I needed a shower as I was covered in dry mud from head to toe. Carrie spotted me and walked over to me. Hi Dad, she said, you look really good. Do you have time to talk to us or not? I looked over at David and caught his signal, so I said yes, but let me shower first. Then David joined us. You two can wait here or come up and wait in the suite that has a kitchen. I said we can order food to be brought up or we can eat down here. Either way is fine with me. Let's go to your suite and order the food while you shower, then we can have a private talk that is long overdue. Carrie said, so we did. So that's what we did. We ordered what we wanted from room service. Then I took a quick shower. As I was getting dressed, Karen called, so I told her what was going on and promised to call her back when I was done. I cracked open a bottle of Crown Royal and poured us all a drink. The kids wanted Coke, hers. I added just a little water and gave it a stir. Dad, David and I have been going through a lot of problems. I just moved home last week. Mom had been talking about her outside relationships for years. We all thought you knew and approved. Mom justified her behavior by saying the two of you had completely different sexual drives. David and I were getting nowhere, so I had a polygraph. I said I hope you both realize that because of the damage that has been done to both of you, it will take time and complete honesty to rebuild a new relationship going forward. I took my grandson in my arms and held the little guy to my chest with his little head resting on my shoulder. I asked David to take a picture of me holding him. I learned that in many ways I was acting like my mother who justified everything. She did it from her point of view. She can't see that it still doesn't make what she did right. Carrie went on to say that I did it without thinking because it was so natural. I now find myself stopping to think a lot before I do anything, to be honest. It was quite a shock. Papa, David said, I am seeing a side of her that I didn't know was there. It has led me to believe that we have more than a 50 to 50% chance of making it. Just remember, it takes time, honest communication and a heart and mind that really listens. I said, you are both young, so remember that it is not unreasonable to seek independent help or advice. Kendra allowed the views of society to interfere with our marriage until she justified throwing away her vows. I bet she still blames me for the end. I added, Dad, you're right. Carrie said, I told my sisters I was done listening to her justify herself. I had a marriage I wanted to save. We got into an argument and I told them when they got their heads out of it we would talk. Until then, don't waste my time. With that said, our food arrived. It was nice to share dinner with them. Carrie asked if I had been on some kind of diet plan. I laughed and explained that I had just been working physically instead of mentally and my body was responding favorably. I no longer spent my days sitting behind a desk or on the couch. It was 10 before they left. As they left, Carrie hugged me and whispered, I like this new dad I'm seeing. I laughed and explained that since the divorce started, a part of me that I had kept hidden was coming out because the long-term relationship with her mother had affected me. I texted Karen to see if she was still up. She was, so I called her and explained how the evening had gone. Time heals all wounds is a favorite saying, but that's not true. It just means that acceptance of what happened has come, no more, no less. You've trained yourself to adjust to it and accept what you can't change. It still doesn't make it right, although progressives will claim it does. Faith and Hope learned that the hard way Tuesday night. It was again about 7 o'clock when I walked into the lobby of the Hampton Inn. My first thought was that Kendra had given me the double whammy. Boy, was I ever right. My twin daughters decided they were going to lecture me on my treatment of their mother. In their eyes my behavior towards their mother was nothing but cowardice. I had taken the young ladies back to my suite for privacy before they went after me for leaving my marriage with their mother. They admitted that both their marriages were over, because their husbands like me could not handle them being totally modern day liberated women. I had had enough. I had enough of their crap, so I called security. When security came, I asked them to remove the young ladies because I was not interested in what they were offering me. My daughters were escorted out the back door and told never to return. The Hampton security staff told them both that they did not appreciate high-class hookers trying to pass on some social disease to their unsuspecting guests. Karen thought what I did was a hoot. She said those young ladies will be doing a lot of thinking tonight, because without love someone is always paying for the sex in some way. Can I told Amber and Meadow about this? She asked. I said yes. If you want to light a stick of dynamite without a match, I couldn't have done a better job. Carrie called my room about 2 hours later. Bravo Dad. Well done. Carrie said my two sisters just found out that their crap stinks just like everyone else's. They just left here still in tears. I couldn't resist the opportunity, one said laughing, because neither of them would give me a chance to explain anything. Their behavior made it clear they didn't want to hear my explanation of anything. Finally I made the only call I could have. Had security run a background check on both of them. Faith and Hope tried to explain that we all have different last names, but they didn't buy it. I told them that if their friends with benefits were whining and eating them, they were actually being paid in advance, and by the look on their faces, I think they finally got it. I'm so glad I never went down that road. I'm embarrassed now that I've talked about it, I said. Was David in on the conversation? I asked him. He heard it all and was pleasantly surprised at how I explained things. It helped us a lot because we both now see what happened with clear eyes. Carrie explained, how could our mother have convinced us that what she was doing was okay? Faith and Hope are really hurting. It's going to take a while for them to work it all out. Up until that moment they didn't see that their behavior made them no better than the street people they had looked down on for years. Carrie explained. I said, think about it. You trashed our father for what he did. Did you ever think about what our behavior and mothers did to him? Or did you only care about yourself? That, my dear, is a question I am still trying to answer for myself. Mom painted our world with rose. It took her getting caught for your daughters to see the reality of their world for what it was. Carrie said, it's sad that most of our society still wears her glasses and is so blind to the truth that it stares them right in the face. Carrie, you have learned something that many adults will never understand in their lives. I said, what is that, Dad? My oldest daughter? I replied that this is what makes your mother and my path in life so different. Welcome to my world. Too bad you had to learn it the hard way. Wednesday night I went to Karen's for a family dinner. The girls wanted to start planning for the move and how we were going to do it. I told them what I had learned from Carrie the night before. After dinner we did the dishes. I washed the girls, dried them, and washed the dishes. I washed the girls, dried and put them away. The girls finally caught us kissing. They continued to tease us about it the rest of the evening. Karen and I were getting ready for a private dinner at a restaurant down by the pier on Friday night. We were sitting across from each other, looking into each other's eyes, having a drink before ordering, when the twins walked in. The host approached us. Your daughters noticed you missed their wave and wondered if you would allow them to move in with us. We wondered if you would allow them to join your table, the host said. I hesitated, but Karen said yes, we would like them to. I stood up and moved over to sit next to her. You can't leave things the way they are with them no matter what. I know you don't like them now, but you still love them, Karen said, so you have to hear them out. Whether I like it or not. Karen was right. We watched as the hostess brought my daughters to our table. We could tell by the look on their faces we both knew they had a lot of work to do. I waited until they sat down. Faith, let me introduce you to Karen, who is not only my lawyer but now my girlfriend, I said firmly. If you are here to berate me some more, please just leave, Dad. We deserve this. Faith said. We had a long talk with Carrie Tuesday night. She was brutal with us and pulled no punches. We went there expecting some support. What we got was the real truth shoved down our throats. By the time she was done with us, we knew exactly what our own behavior had shown about ourselves. It really does not paint us in a good light. Faith added. Carrie showed us that we were being paid for our services like a hooker, but in a different way. She continued. We talked about our behavior among ourselves and came to the understanding that a lot of street people do it for money to survive, not by choice. Hope explained. We did it because we thought it would be fun. When we got home we confronted Mom about it. We got into a huge argument. Mom finally said we had been listening to too much of your conservative bull crap. Faith said. Mom in one of her rants said, so what if others get hurt? They should learn to grow up in our society. The only wrong is getting caught. There are no consequences for social crimes. Look at our federal government. We have some of the biggest politicians making money illegally and nothing happens to them. It shows the laws only apply to some. Hope said. Nothing is black or white. Faith said. Each of us has the right to live our lives as we see fit. Mom still has no remorse or guilt. That's when it hit us. We teach our students what is right and wrong, but we have blurred what that is by our own behavior. We are down here today because we found a 2-bedroom furnished apartment nearby that we rented. It's reasonable and close to the school where we both teach, and we both feel that this is the first step in rebuilding our lives. It's time for us to stop living mother's lies and find out who we are without her influence. Hope and I will move in tomorrow since mother will be busy with some political party thing, Faith added. When we saw you, we both realized we had to apologize to you because we were so wrong, Dad. You really had no choice but to do what you did. We see now that if you had faced us directly, it would have been 4 against 1. Hope said you knew we had to work it out in our own way. Sometimes you just have to let things work out on their own. I said you were already forgiven because I saw your behavior as being influenced by your mother. Kendra, I forgive her, but I will never give her a second chance again. Her actions have always been self-centered and deliberate. Dad always drove us out and brought us back. He talked to us every night while we were there. We never heard from Mom the whole time we were gone. We learned that with her it was out of sight, out of mind. Grandma always said Mom was the shallowest person she ever knew. So Dad, why are you in town? Faith asked Karen. Can we get your cell phone number? Dinner turned into a celebration. The twins learned about the new house we were building and why I was in town. They found out Karen had 2 daughters a few years younger. While we ate, Hope got a text from her older sister asking if they were okay. Hope texted back, having dinner with Dad and his girlfriend Karen. Faith and I will stop by later to explain everything. We walked the pier, taking a relaxing stroll, amazed at how things were. My dad said give a person enough rope and they'll hang themselves. I said it was true. Their own behavior, pointed out by their own gender, exposed what they really were. If I had been here it would have been 4 against 1, this way they were against themselves. Their own sense of honesty and morality brought them down. Evil, doesn't it? Karen said, or too many in our society blame others and not themselves. In many ways I was their scapegoat. I couldn't go along with what they were doing because in my eyes it was never right. I said to Kendra that was a weakness to use against you. Karen said I see it as one of your strengths because your actions show who you are. Kendra came home expecting to see her twin daughters. The political event on Saturday had run longer than she expected and she was going to suggest they go out for the evening. She thought about their last argument and realized she had gone too far. It had gotten ugly because she saw some of their father's traits in them and she couldn't let that happen. She had just thrown her purse on the counter to get a Coke out of the fridge when she saw the 2 house keys sitting on the counter on top of a short note. We've moved out. We don't like what you've helped us become. Good luck with your life. We've blocked your number. It was signed by Faith and Hope. I haven't heard from them since Tuesday night when Dad had security throw them out of the Hampton Inn, Carrie said, wanting to see her mother. Said she wanted to see how her mother would react. Why did he have them thrown out? Kendra asked. They wanted to tell him how badly he treated you. They went after him like they were trying to cut him down. Dad said I've had enough of this and called security. When they showed up he told them he didn't buy what they were trying to sell. Carrie said security escorted them out the back door because they thought they were high-ass hookers, but they're not. Do you want to know what I told them, Mother? Carrie asked seriously. Yes, maybe I do. Kendra said I told them when their friends with benefits were whining and eating them, they weren't. Carrie laughed because her mother's face went blank. Kendra began to cry. Carrie's words hit her hard. She knew she could never speak to her husband Colin directly again or be alone with him. What Carrie said was her father's truth. Kendra realized it immediately and without saying a word to any of them, Kendra said, I'm sorry. Without saying a word to any of them, it destroyed them all. No one who was honest could argue with that simple statement. Anyone who heard it would recognize it as a simple, direct fact. All those weekends away with her friends with benefits that she thought were romantic adventures were just payments for her services. Refused to put any spin on the raw truth. It took her weeks to understand what he said on the video the night she came home from Vancouver. By her actions she had turned her twins into what he saw her as, a high-class hooker for over 10 years. No man could accept that. No wonder he left her. She had given him no choice. She had never seen it from his side until now. She never saw it from his side until now. When his truth came out she was ruined. And he knew it. By walking away he left her with something. She hadn't left him with her dignity. She had destroyed herself and her whole family. She had taken her progressive lifestyle too far. She no longer had a relationship with her husband or daughters because she couldn't admit the truth. She couldn't admit the truth about her actions. To admit responsibility was not the progressive way. She had no scapegoat. This one was hers. She had ruined herself. Kendra looked around the house and realized she would have to sell it to move on. There were too many memories that reminded her of what she had lost. It was hard to face the truth. She would say the house was too big for her and everyone would believe it. Eric Hopper would be happy to know what had happened, thinking she had gotten off easy. She would be like him, all alone. Karen and I came back to her house after a night of drinking and dancing. We fell asleep. Meadow and Amber took advantage of this by using Karen's phone to send pictures to my 2 youngest daughters who called back. The 4 of them started planning. One of her daughters got a blanket and threw it over us. I woke up with a vision of a sleeping angel in my arms. My phone showed it was after 7 o'clock a.m. We had gone to bed around 1 a.m. Meadow was already up, sitting in a chair watching us. I guess I'll have to get used to seeing this, Meadow said with a smile. Mom looked so happy and content. I'll go make coffee for all of us. About an hour later, the four of us were sitting around the kitchen table, relaxing and talking, when the girls surprised us this afternoon. My side of the family will be arriving for a get-together, Karen said. Karen and I hurried. I checked the fuel for the barbecue and it was fine. While she got dressed after making the grocery list, we went to my suite so I could shower and shave quickly. Then we went to the local grocery store. Just as we were going in, we ran into Kendra coming out. She stopped in front of me. Colin, please let the girls know I'm selling the house, Kendra said. If they want anything, Carrie still has a key. Since they're not talking to me, they can take what they want while I'm gone, I said. As far as I'm concerned, I took what I wanted when I left. I'm only in town for another 6 days. She nodded and walked away. We continued to load the car with groceries and talked about our awkward meeting with Kendra. Something serious has happened in Kendra's life that we don't know about, I said. She seemed out of it today. Did she? She seemed out of it today. Do you think the twins moving out might have caused that? Karen asked. No, she was used to it being just us, I said. Something else must have happened that she's trying to sort out. She loves that house, so whatever happened came out of nowhere and has affected her deeply. I told my daughters what their mother had said at the grocery store. David said he wanted the big plasma TV. Carrie just rolled her eyes. I chuckled to myself. Our first 2 family reunions couldn't have gone better. After my daughters left and the cleanup was done, we relaxed with a cold beer. Amber said, why would they do that? Karen asked. They followed their mother's example and got caught up in friends with benefits. It cost them their first marriages. I said. It took me leaving Kendra for them to see their situation in a new light. Last Tuesday they confronted me about my treatment of their daughters. Carrie said that when their friends with benefits wined and dined them, they were actually being paid in advance for their services. Amber was in total shock. Amber and Meadow, your mother and I were taught early on that it doesn't matter how we see ourselves, it's how the world sees us. Sees us, David said. People see what you do and say in different ways. Our behavior says more about us than words ever can. David's right, Karen said, leaning against me. I couldn't have explained it better. That's why your father's actions raised questions. They contradicted everything he said, so the twins decided to remove their mother's influence until they could figure out who they are. I'm very proud of them. I explained to them that the healing had begun because they were honest about their behavior. I guess our words got through, because for a few minutes the silence was deafening. Then Amber said, you're going to be a great dad. Dad? Karen lost it. The rest of the week was quiet. As much as possible the new tractor passed all the tests. The president was thrilled. I named it Beta. The family had a reunion before I left. The twins got closer to Karen's daughters. We couldn't get little Colin out of Karen's hands. Her mother instinct was strong. Eric and Karen finally agreed on the division of assets. When she offered him the house, he took it thinking it was his chance to get his daughters back. Karen watched me board the plane home. It was the last week of August. The homestead was finished. The old house was torn down and the new one built. The barn was improved where needed and even the yard was cleaned up. The last thing I did was rebuild the driveway to the house and barn. Uncle John drove me to the airport because I would be driving a U-Haul. Uncle John helped set up the new furniture and took what we didn't need from Mom and Dad's stuff to Goodwill or found someone who could use it. It was nice to see neighbors helping neighbors again. Met me at the airport that Friday at about 6 o'clock with the biggest smile I've ever seen. Amber and Meadow were with her. After giving Karen a long overdue kiss, I got down on one knee and proposed to the delight of her daughters. They videotaped the whole thing, including me slipping the ring on her finger. Amber and Meadow, who knew about my surprise, had arranged a huge celebration dinner at a restaurant with food and drinks. The ladies kept us on the dance floor most of the evening. When we got to Karen's house, Meadow told us to wait in the car for a moment. She and Amber ran in and came out with a large overnight bag for their mother. Mom, Dad, we booked you a suite at the Hampton Inn for the night. At the Hampton Inn for the weekend. We don't want to see you until Monday, Amber said. In our suite we found a huge basket with 2 bottles of champagne, chocolates, strawberries, 2 glasses, balloons and roses. The card said, congratulations from your 5 daughters. I don't think we left the suite all weekend. After a wonderful breakfast Monday morning we went to pick up the U-Haul. I asked about it, but Karen said I'd have to wait until the afternoon for the unveiling. At Faith and Hope showed up and announced they were also moving east. They had applied for jobs near where I would be living and were hired by the Vermilion School Board. Karen had given them some furniture and we would move what they took from their mother's house to a rental storage unit. They rented a 3-bedroom house through a realtor. I dropped the lawsuit against Eric Hopper when he agreed to pay all my Vancouver court costs. We received our divorce decrees at the end of September, and on the last Saturday in October, Karen and I exchanged vows in front of our blended family, Carrie and David. Karen gave me the ultimate surprise in front of my dear husband Colin and our family. I want to tell you all that there will be a new weight coming into the world sometime in May. Our doctor hasn't told me yet if it will be a boy or a girl.